So the first one we're going to turn to is cannabis. Now, admittedly, this isn't all that below the radar, unless perhaps you've been under some rocks recently. But we know now that cannabis is going to be legalized for recreational use as of October 17th. What we don't know necessarily is what that retail environment is going to look like here in Ontario. So we've seen some issues, some rumors have come out to suggest that there may be privatization in terms of retail storefronts. We still expect the online sales are going to be going through the Ontario Cannabis Retail Corporation, which was established by the previous government for this purpose. But it's not just it's not just the recreational side that might be seeing changes. It also could be the medical side.
Oh, absolutely. For example, the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, which was part and parcel of the previous bill, was supposed to come into effect on July 1st. And when the new government came in, they decided to hold off on those new regulations as it related to the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. And what that would have done is make vaping, regulations around vaping consistent with those around with smoking. And that was part of the cannabis bill, because in the cannabis legislation, it does allow people who have cannabis for the purposes of, for medical purposes, to be able to smoke it in public, not recreational. So those who would obtain it or who consume it for recreational purposes would not be able to consume it in public, except those who, except in areas that are very consistent with that of smoking. So, for example, no patios, can't take it into the movie theater with you, and so forth. So, and then to harmonize that as well with vaping. And so those regulations were supposed to come into effect July 1st, and we're not. That has the potential to be reviewed, and especially since October 17th is when the legalization will happen, one can anticipate that the government is very much working on that. The other piece, of course, is the fact that if the government is flexible on the idea of who can dispense and sell cannabis, there's an opportunity potentially for it to be dispensed, for example, in other retail outlets such as pharmacies for medical purposes. So that's why these reports that came out indicating that the government is considering changing the retail model is very interesting for a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really the key point here. So what really does this mean to you? And ultimately, if there is a change in retail, and obviously this has been rumored but yet not yet actually announced by the new government, this has immediate impacts obviously on those who are interested in getting into the retail game in terms of cannabis, as well as, frankly, in most provinces across the country, the cannabis retail regime has mimicked the alcohol retail regime, and since the Ford government indicated that they'd be liberalizing alcohol retail here in Ontario, we certainly would expect that whatever comes out on cannabis is probably going to be mirrored on the alcohol side. But frankly, everyone is going to ultimately be affected by this, whether it's human resources issues, whether it's people who sell ancillary products, people who are not interested in being in a strip mall with a cannabis retail shop. Everyone is going to be affected in some way by what changes happen with this legislation. And so really why we think that it's something that should be on people's radars. Not to mention that there are also natural health products out there like topical treatments and other oils and so forth that contain CBD that really kind of in a gray area. We're not sure exactly where they're going to be sold or how. And that might be addressed within this as well.
Yeah, and I think that the fact is that the federal regime does come into effect October 17th, regardless, and the government is going to have to be prepared. So at some point, if they want to make changes, they're going to have to make them pretty quick.